Hi there, Lewis again from TakeTwoFilms. Today we'll be showing you a timeline of crime fiction, and I'll be going through all the films ranging from 1912 all the way up to 2015. Hope you enjoy. The crime genre started out in 1912 with D.W. Griffith directing a 17-minute film called The Musketeers of Pig Alley. There isn't much to this film. After some small research, it does provide an outline of what crime films were to become, as this wasn't a finished product as such, as the crime genre was just about to develop and gain some very key conventions that are still being used in more modern films. And I think it's the later films, sort of after the turn of the 50s, that sort of laid down the groundworks for all modern films. And also a lot of remakes were about in the 70s and 80s. And I just think that modern day films kind of follow the conventions of older films from the 70s and the 80s because they're sort of closer, and although they might have some similar conventions to the ones from 100 years ago, like The Musketeers of Pig Alley, I don't think that The Musketeers of Pig Alley influenced the crime genre enough to stop it from dying out between 1950 and 1960. Was eventually made of it. These films are very, very old in terms of cinema, and it's crazy to see how far we've advanced, but it is a masterpiece and played a major part and laid down all the groundworks for the future of the crime genre. If this film hadn't started off the film noir style, crime fiction could have died out for a longer period, and I think that it was very important for the crime genre, but obviously at that point there wasn't enough crime films to sort of stop it from dying out eventually. The crime genre died out between 1950 and 1960, with the action genre taking centre stage. It's fair to say there wasn't enough popularity around the genre, unlike action, so any future films had to become a worldwide hit to reignite the flame for crime fiction. And I think that the reason why it died out was because there wasn't enough blockbuster films that were coming out. They're mainly sort of low-key, hardly, no big budget films that could really influence other larger film companies and large conglomerates to make these sort of films, as I think that obviously you don't get the big conglomerates like Disney, but also companies like Time Warner really could have had a massive role in making sure that the crime genre didn't die out. But I think that after then the crime genre really did start, and it also started to pick up pace, as I will explain in the next film that you will see in just a second. The Godfather, 1972, a huge hit with the general public. It is still being talked about today, with many believing that this is what turned around the crime genre's fortunes. The Godfather glamorised criminals like Vito Corleone, and people were obsessed with the mafia lifestyle. This film is what most modern films follow. It raised the bar of expectation, and is exactly what any beginner in the filmmaking world like myself should watch. I analysed and researched this film, and I was blown away. It was ahead of its time in terms of cinematography, and the plot was exceptional. The dialogue, costumes, sound, editing and actors were all brilliant. The film set key conventions for all crime films to follow, a truly enjoyable piece of artistic film work from the early 70s. And I think that it had the same effect as most films now, because most people love the sort of con artist lifestyle like they did back then with the mafia lifestyle. The film's perfect, and it is definitely what turned around the crime genre, as it was so popular, and also other films like Taxi Driver, Goodfellas, that are coming up shortly, definitely followed after that, and they still kept the same sort of ideas, conventions, and I think they really sort of carried the torch and passed it on each time they went along, because the crime genre hasn't died out since. In fact, it's probably got more popular because more people are able to make crime genre films. And also, I'm going to pick up a camera and just film and plan and research and evaluate, and I think that The Godfather has definitely been the one film that's inspired me the most. Taxi Driver was another film, and it's great for all filmmakers to watch. Another film that changed the way people saw crime. From seeing Robert De Niro in more recent films like Meet the Parents, it was weird seeing him so young and notorious. And I've enjoyed his performance in all films like Heat, Taxi Driver and Goodfellas, and it's kind of a shame that Meet the Parents didn't really showcase his full acting potential, but nevertheless it was still a brilliant film, and although it is unrelated to the crime genre, it's still a very funny film, and you can still see his real personality shine through like you could in all of his other films. The film sent the general public crazy, a little too crazy in terms of presidential assassinations, and I feel that the film was so iconic, with simple costume elements like De Niro's mohawk, sending the public into meltdown, with people copying his hairstyle, and the film was a masterpiece by the legend of Martin Scorsese, whose influence in the crime genre is huge, with other films like The Wolf of Wall Street and Goodfellas entertaining the whole world, and also showing how vital the crime genre is to Hollywood, to independent filmmakers, to everyone, because in almost every single film, no matter if there's a bad guy or a good guy, there's always going to be some sort of crime involved, and I think that a genre based around crime is definitely perfect, and I think that it's what many directors like Martin Scorsese, Dan Gilroy, who directed Nightcrawler, and also obviously Quentin Tarantino, absolutely love making, because they're just so diverse, so entertaining, and also you get the right balance between action and dialogue. Goodfellas, another Martin Scorsese motion picture, with the film being made in 1990, and it is clear to see what influenced the modern films as well, as this time the focus is on materialistic values like money, cars, and also men are very attracted to women in this film. Much like modern films, like Focus and Nightcrawler, it has used actors as a way to sort of showcase the sort of type of film that it will be, as using Robert De Niro again, it's taught me the type of character to use, because De Niro is the perfect criminal, because he's dark, he's serious, but then also he's also has a different side to him where he's funny, he's also caring about his fellow friends and colleagues, and it also this can also help me for my future trailer, and it also stars the Martin Scorsese shot, which has inspired my shot ideas that I will be making a future video for. And I think that the reason why this film was such a popular film was because it was a true story and everyone could relate to it, because obviously they must have lived in that, like if you live in sort of like a place like New York or somewhere, you can always relate to a film because you can always point out where places where you've been or something, and then also you can recognise the sort of typical people that are trying to make it in life, even though they're not typically criminals, but they can still relate to the film in one way more than another. And I think that Goodfellas sent the public crazy because it was another Martin Scorsese motion picture, and also I think that the use of the characters' lifestyles with the Copacabana shot, I think that that's what really sort of shows how people can make it in life, because as you see, the characters go up the typical social ladder, and I think that Goodfellas was definitely a film that I had to put in the timeline because it just changed the way that people viewed crime films, and also it still had the sort of film noir style to it, even though the film noir style did start to get a little bit outdated after this point. Nightcrawler, a 2014 film which is very modern as it was only a year ago. This is another crime film, but it doesn't represent Lewis Bloom as the criminal, and it doesn't follow the typical conventions as the previous films on this timeline have. However, it is a brilliant crime film, different, and that's why I love it. Jake Gyllenhaal was exceptionally good in his role at playing a deranged average stringer. So there is also a real emphasis on dialogue and how Lewis speaks to people, a great representation of how modern crime films have changed, and it's a very different crime film because you still get films like Focus, which I'll be talking about in just a second. Films like Focus are very sort of typical, but have also like it's about the criminals, whereas this film, it's about Lewis Bloom and his camera filming the criminals. So it's kind of him close to the action as a normal character, and I think this is why people can relate to Lewis Bloom, although they're not typically mentally the same as him, because he's very different. He's sort of isolated in society, and I think that the way that he goes about his business is very different to what people would expect. And I think that it's very shocking because of how he treats his colleague Ricky, and also how he is so desperate to make it that he will film people dying, people being murdered, people, anything like that, just any sort of crime, and he is there. And I think that this shows the sort of it brings the audience closer to the action, because he's obviously very scared and it adds suspense because he's filming someone being killed on camera and obviously putting his own life at risk at the same time. I think that it's changed the way that crime films are viewed by the audience, as they see him as more sort of suspenseful now, whereas in the old films it would be about mafia and obviously people trying to steal money from a bank or something. So the crime genre has definitely changed, although not all films follow the same sort of different innovation like Nightcrawler has, where its focus is sort of quite similar to Heat in some ways more than another. But I do think that different crime films are also very successful, just as the typical conventional crime films. Focus, a 2015 film which is as modern as Nightcrawler, but very, very different. The film follows Nikki and Jess, and this is different as it uses male and female companions, which creates a different crime film. But the con artists deliver a fantastic performance, and it is easy to agree that modern crime films haven't dipped in terms of performance, as they're getting even more creative, and the storylines are always different. Focus was a brilliant film, and it shows how most actors are able to fit their roles as Will Smith and Margot Robbie showcase an acting masterclass, a different style of crime film, with the same conventions being used, as you still see the murder, guns, any sort of weapon being used, money, women, cars, all of it, but you see it in sort of a less frightening way, as Nikki and Jess aren't in danger until the end, and also you see a connection between male and female, which you don't typically see in all crime films. Thank you for watching my timeline video, and in conclusion, I think that the groundworks were set by the films that took place after the crime genre had died out, as I think that after the sort of short 10-year period of extinction for the crime genre, I think that it was really The Godfather, Taxi Driver, and then also Goodfellas and Heat that sort of kept the crime genre going. And in conclusion, I think the crime genre will only keep on getting more popular, because I think that most people want to see sort of different crime films, and you can go in so many different directions. You can combine it with thriller, you can combine it with horror, you can combine it with action, you can even combine it with comedy, because anything's possible in film. And I think that the crime genre can go so many different places, and I do strongly believe that it will never die out again, especially with up and coming actors and also up and coming directors, as well as the old sort of directors that can tell true stories, like Martin Scorsese, who told the story of The Wolf of Wall Street, which was also a real story. Same as Goodfellas. So there's a lot to enjoy in the future from the crime genre, and I think that the timeline will only get even better as my analysis carries on. As in 2016, I might even have the chance to research a film that's just coming out, and stay tuned for more videos from Take Two Films and myself, Lewis Sillery.